Hello fellow Gunters. Before stating, let me tell you a sad story. This was the endgame armor set I was going to recommend to you all. Look at this, maxed burst file, part breaker, some extra agitator and the set bonuses of Guardia Arkveld who I nickname Gark and Ebony O'Dogaran, that spoiler warns it is in the game. And also got a maximized Flayer. So I was editing the video to try it out and couldn't see if Flayer was working at all. Because of that I got deep into learning if and how Flayers work and then see if it is applicable to shelling, and because of that Gunlance. I also read some rumors about the skill being bugged, but one of the things I take pride on is to always first-hand verify things. To understand Flayer, the first thing you need to understand is how wounds work. I'm using the dummy for this for convenience. For all the testing I have set the skin to hard and then raised the difficulty of the dummy to the maximum, which has an effect of making it harder to wound and the tests more accurate. A woundable part of a monster has 4 states. The first is the normal status, where it lacks any kind of visual effect. Then, after a certain damage is dealt depending on the part and the difficulty of the monster, the skin will gain a whitish effect. Then after some more damage is done, a wound is created. While the monster is wounded, you do extra melee attack and your focus strikes will get extended, sure you all know this one thing. And after more damage or a successful focus strike, the wound will close. The skin will then turn black and no amount of damage will count for additional wounds. After a while, the black skin will disappear and the skin will be back to its original state. In the training dummy at max difficulty, you need 200 points of damage to turn the skin white and then another 200 to create the wound. The overflowing damage done to turn the wound white will not count for creating the wound. Let me explain this a bit better. Imagine you are using a greatsword and doing like 500 damage in one swing. Then, that swing will only turn the skin white and you will still need to deal another 200 damages for the wound to be open. The 300 extra damage will not overflow for the wound. Stuff like this is why I love wyvern fire being multi-hit instead of a single big hit. If your wyvern fire does 105 damage per hit and hits 4 times, it will create a wound in a single use and is not forced to do it twice. When I have to wake up a monster usually means that it is about to die anyways and could capture it. Anyways, thanks to this knowledge we can know if Flayer is working or not. The blind verification is easy. Attack the dummy if possible with the weakest attack you can. If you wound it before 200 damage, Flayer is working. So, I test the skill with the weakest Gunlance of all, Hope, and I count the damage. With the test I observe 2 things. The first is like a white mic-like splash effect that happens at random when attacking the dummy. And the other is that indeed it is working and the skin turns white and then wounds before 200 damage. But then I did another test, this time doing only pokes and got virtually no effect on the skill. The one where I got results was the one using pokes and wide sweeps. The conclusion I get is that instead of applying the extra wounding to every attack, it works like status like poison and blast and only some hits apply the effect. But unlike status effects, looks like that the extra wounding dealt is based on how strong is the attack you are doing. The pokes are weak and because of that, you get almost no extra wound damage on each poke and need a lot to get noticeable results even with all 5 levels of the skill. I can do an approximation of how much wounding is being done there. In the first part of the wounding, it procs 5 stabs and 1 wound, breaking at 193 damage. In the second part, takes 184 damage. So, the first part is almost a 10% difference and the second 20% it is a wild difference and demonstrates how luck is a huge factor on the skill with the heavier weighting a lot more. I bet I can figure out a way to calculate it with more precision, but that is not the point of the video. The important thing is that for starters Flayer is better the heavier are you hits. And Gunlance have no heavy melee hits, sweeps got greatly nerfed in damage and the sweeps inside Worms Take Full Blast are not heavy at all. If you are using a weapon that use weak hits, you also should verify this on your side. Now, that is more than enough to look at Flayer doubtfully, but I still haven't answered the most crucial question, does it work with shelling? And the answer is no too. I knew this was coming the moment I saw the white special thing coming out. I said something funny? I mean the proc effect from Flayer in melee attacks. Shells and stakes do not carry status effects. And indeed, shelling with Hope Gunlance shows how the skin turns white and the wound is created exactly at 200 damage. Absolutely nothing. And since more than half the attacks Gunlance have can't proc Flayer and they are weak to boot. then there is no doubt Flayer is awful for Gunlance at this moment and should be avoided as a source of damage. You still may use Gark armor for the healing effect, but care to avoid taking the pieces with Flayer. With this conclusion, the Gunlance meta and casual moves towards the use of agitator. I'm very disappointed with this. And please, if anyone can tell me I'm wrong, I will be even grateful for it, because I really loved the idea of the skill and would have loved to use it. But until then, I will repeat it once again. Avoid Flayer. Thanks for watching. And see you in the hunt.